Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Daled, and Mirtz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Reish Mem Hey Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn the halachas of Iruvei Chatzeros. We pick up today on Reish Mem Hey Amid Aleph in the middle of the page in the Shulchan Aruch with a new Siman, Siman Shin Ayin Vav, Bar Ube'er Shebein Shtei Chatzeros, the halachas that pertain to a bar, which is a water cistern, ube'er, a well, shebein shtei chatzeros, that exists between two chatzeros, so that it's actually straddling two chatzeros, or we're going to see another case where the water cistern or the well is actually situated between the chatzeros, ubay dalet seifim, and here we have 4 seifim. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Beis Yisrael Hanasuna Batzaru Bashivya Haimdim Bein Bayamu Bein Bayabasha Hamakim Yirachem Alehem V'Yitzia Mitzar Lervacha Me'afel La'Ora Mishibud L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv Ne'emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema for Achia Gadol Moshe Ben Esther Fradel Yitzchak Ben Sion Ben Dusha Rivka Bashir Aleach Havadasa Basriel Serel Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malkachana, and for Yerucham ben Masha, they should all have refuah shalema b'sar shar chayei Yisrael. And as always, we're mispal that in the schus of the Torah learning of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makom shehem. Okay, Siman Shin Ayin Vav Sif Aleph. So before I even begin reading the Shulchan Aruch inside, for those of you who have a Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, I would direct you to footnote number 1, to the picture that they have. It's a decent picture. It kind of shows the case that we're going to be dealing with. For those of you who don't have a Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, but perhaps you have the Oz V'Hadar print of the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, I would direct you to, let me just find it quickly here, I would direct you to page limud Beis in the back of the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah, where they have the pictures and the diagrams, and you could take a look at the first picture from Siman Shin Ayin Vav, where they have a decent picture of what we're dealing with here. What are we dealing with here? We're dealing with two chatzeros that are next to each other, two adjoining chatzeros. Now, in the middle of these two chatzeros, there is an open water pit, or a cistern, but it's opened on top and it's filled with water. Half of this bar, or this be'er, is on one side, it's in Chatzer A. The other half of it is in Chatzer B. The wall that separates Chatzer A and Chatzer B crosses over the top of this bar. So the wall that separates the two Chatzeros bisects the well. It goes over the bar, and now half of it is open to Chatzer A, half of it is open to Chatzer B. Now, Chatzer A and Chatzer B have not joined in a joint Iruvei Chatzeros, either because they can't, maybe the wall that exists between them does not have a Pesach or a Chaloin, so the wall cuts them off and does not allow them to join in a joint Iruvei Chatzeros, or even if there is a Pesach or a Chaloin, maybe they just chose not to join in a joint Iruvei Chatzeros. Okay, now, the problem that we're dealing with is that Chazal look at the water in the bar, they look at the inside of this bar as being a shared rishus. We don't look at this bar and say, okay, half of the bar is in Chatzer A, so the people of Chatzer A get half the bar. If they want to take a dli, if they want to take a bucket that started off Shabbos in their house, a keli sheshavas babayis, bring it to the edge of the chutzner, bring it to the wall, lower it into their half of the bar, everything should be fine. So too on the other side. No, we don't say that. We look at the water that's inside this bar as being totally mixed. Arive Maya, the Gemara says. The water is mixed. We don't look at water as being static. And therefore, we don't look at one side of the bar as belonging to Chatzer A and the other side of the bar on the other side of the wall as belonging to Chatzer B. We look at it as a shared rishus. Okay, now that we have established that the inside of the bar is a shared rishus, we understand the problem. If you want to take a deli sheshavas babayis, You want to take a keli sheshavas babayis and you want to lower it down into the bar, you're now transferring a keli sheshavas babayis, right? Your chutzner, a house in your chutzner, and you're transferring that keli sheshavas babayis into a shared rishus, into a rishus that belongs at least partially to the other chutzner, and you don't have an erev with that other chutzner. So that would be one problem. Another problem would be if now you take, let's say you have a deli sheshavas b'chutzner. You don't have to come on to a deli sheshavas babayis. You have a deli sheshavas b'chutzner. So you'll take your bucket that started off Shabbos in the chutzner, you'll lower it into the bar. That's not a problem. Now you're transferring a keli sheshavas b'chutzner to another chutzner. That's mutter. But now when you draw the water up, you're still okay. You draw the water up into the chutzner, you want to take a drink, you're good, but you can't take the water into your house because then you're taking water that started off in a bar that belongs partially to a different chutzner and you're transferring it to your house. So now you're taking something that started off in one rishus, in a shared rishus with the other chutzner with whom you don't have an eruv chatzeros, and you're transferring it to your bias in a different chutzner. You're not allowed to do that. That's the problem that we're going to be dealing with here, and we have to see how we're going to resolve it, the different tikkunim that Chazal made, how we could rectify the problem. Now, one thing I want to point out is that we already had a precedent in Siman Shin Nun Hey. In Shin Nun Hey, we already had the precedent for what's called a mechitza tluya, a hanging mechitza that we allow to cut off a section of a body of water. What was that case? Over there we had a case where there's a house that's on the edge of the river, and the house has a porch. The porch is extending over the water. Now, the house obviously is a rishus hayachid. The gzustera, the balcony, the porch of the house, has a din of chayrei rishus hayachid. It's opened up to the rishus hayachid. It's chayrei rishus hayachid. The porch also has a din of rishus hayachid. The water below is a carmelis. Now, let's say there was an opening, there was a hole in the floor of this balcony. Were you to take a bucket and lower it down from the balcony through the hole, down into the water below, draw water from the water below, bring it up to the gzustera, to the porch, you would be transferring water from a carmelis to a rishus hayachid, which is aser. So we saw in Shin Nun Hey different ways that you could resolve this problem. One way was with what's called a mechitza tluya. If you made a mechitza, if you made a wall surrounding the bottom of the hole, and you extended those walls down, I think it was Dalet Tvachim. It's Shin Nun Hey, 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 Sif Gimel, Shin Nun Hey, Sif Bey, Al Yedei Mechitza Tluya. No, 10 Tvachim. You need 10 Tvachim. You need that mechitza tluya, those walls, you need them extending down 10 tvachim. But they don't have to go all the way down to the water. They just have to extend under the balcony surrounding the opening. They have to extend down 10 tvachim. Now, you could take a bucket, lower it through the hole, down to the water below, and you could draw water up. Why? Because that mechitza tluya up above, underneath the balcony, tluya means hanging. These walls are hanging up high over the water. They're hanging off the bottom of the balcony. That mechitza tluya, we see it as extending downward, going down into the water, cutting off that section of water down below. And now that section of the water down below becomes a rishus hayachid. And now when you draw water up, we say that you're taking it from rishus hayachid to rishus hayachid, not from a carmelis to a rishus hayachid. So we've already seen the precedent for this idea of a mechitza tluya. And in this sif now, we're going to see again another manifestation of this idea of mechitza tluya to separate water. But again, what I want to focus on right now in this hakdama is we should understand clearly what the issue is over here. The issue over here is that this bar that's straddling the two chatzeros, we do not look at the half that's on the side of the wall of Chatzer A as belonging to Chatzer A, the half that's on the side of the wall belonging to Chatzer B as belonging to Chatzer B. We don't look at it that way. We look at the entire bar as being a shared rishus. That's where the problem comes in. Against that backdrop, let's see the Mechaber here, Sif Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Bar shebein shtei chatzeros, when you have a water pit, a cistern, or a well that is located between two chatzeros, it's straddling the two chatzeros. Ve'ein beineim pesach and chaloyin sheyuchlu la'arev. And in the wall separating the two chatzeros, there is no doorway or window that would allow the two chatzeros to join in a joint Ruva chatzeros. Ay, sheyesh beineim. Or perhaps there is a Pesach or a Chaloin that would allow them to join in a joint Ruva chatzeros. However, v'lo yervu, but they chose not to join in a joint Ruva chatzeros. Says the Mechaber, Ein memalim mimenu b'Shabbos. No one is allowed to draw water out of that bar on Shabbos. Why? Because it's a shared rishus. Transferring the dli, keli sheshavas babayis, into the bar is an issue. Transferring water out of the bar and bringing it to the house is an issue. So, ein memalin bimenu b'Shabbos. Nobody could take water from this bar on Shabbos to the house. Elim kain also mechitza, unless they create a mechitza, a partition, and this partition is going to go down into the bar. Asara. This partition has to be 10 tfachim tall. Lamayla min hamayim. The Mechaber is now going to tell us two different ways that you can make this mechitza. The first way is lamayla min hamayim. You could have the wall going down into the bar, but most of it, almost all of it, could be above the water level, right? So you have the pit. Maybe the water doesn't come all the way up to the banks of the pit. Maybe the water is below. You could make your mechitza starting at the surface, going down into the bar, but almost all of that mechitza could be above the water level. That's what asara lamayla min hamayim means, that the mechitza is above the water level. It's in the pit, but it's above the water level. But v'tzarich sheyiyeh tefach min hamechitza yored b'sayich hamayim. But one tefach of the wall has to go beneath the waterline. So let's be very clear about this. Let's say that from the bank down to the water level is 9 tefachim. Fine. You could start a wall at the top of the bar, and you could go down 10 tefachim. So that 9 tefachim of your wall is within the banks of the pit. It's down below the surface of the pit, but it's above the water level. But the bottom tefach of this wall is going to extend down beneath the water level. That would be one way to separate the bar. Once you make that mechitza, now we look at it and we say, okay, the people of Chatzer A, they could take their bucket sheshavas babayis, they could take their deli sheshavas babayis, and they could put it on their side of the bar. We're not going to consider it a shared rishus anymore. Why? Because there's a heker. They've created a heker that, and this is a kula that the Chazal made, they've created a heker that they are staying within the bounds of their rishus. They're lowering the bucket right into their side. They can't lower the bucket into the other side. There's a wall that's blocking between their side and the other side. So they're lowering the bucket into their side, and the thought process is that they're drawing water from their side. The water could flow underneath the wall. This is a kula that Chazal made. Remember, this whole thing is a din d'Rabbanan. The whole Eruv Chatzeros is a din d'Rabbanan, right? So Chazal made a kula for Mayim that you could do this and you could put the bucket into your side of the mechitza. Now, that's the first way that you could make a mechitza, says the Mechaber. But there's another way, continues the Mechaber, with 3 lines into the Siman in the middle of the line. let's say, instead of starting the mechitza from the top, above the water level, and going down, maybe you did it the other way. Maybe you started the mechitza from down beneath the water level, and you're coming up. Says the Mechaber, you could do that as well. If the vast majority, the words of the Mechaber are all, but it's not all, if most of the mechitza is down beneath the waterline, you could do that too. You could have 9 tefachim beneath the waterline. But then, you need at least 1 tefach to extend above the water level. So that it should be very obvious and noticeable that this mechitza is serving to cut the bar into 2 separate sides. Chatzer Eis Rishus and Chatzer Beis Rishus. So if you have a 10 tefach wall that's completely beneath the water level, it's not nicker. We can't see that there's a separation, right? So you can have 9 tefachim beneath the water level, but you need at least 1 tefach above the water level. Let's pause here and see some Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Aleph, ve'ein beinehem. You have these 2 chatzeros, and there is not a Pesach or a Chaloin between them. What the Mechaber wants to say is, in the wall that separates between the 2 chatzeros, which goes across the opening of the bar, it bisects the opening of the bar. There's a better word that I'm looking for, but it's not coming to my mind. Ein Pesach v'chaloin. In that separating wall between the chatzeros, you don't have a doorway or a window, so it doesn't allow for them to join in a joint to river chatzeros. Ice cotton bays, ein memalin. Neither side could draw water from the bar, and this is a very important Mishnah Berurah, and the Mishnah Berurah takes this straight out of Rashi. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what's the problem here? Shaharei kol echad mimale merishos chaverei. If you draw water even from your side, you are taking water from the other side. We look at this as being shared. Like I said, the Gemara says, Arive Maya. The water is considered to be all mixed. Very nice, the bucket is on your side of the chotzer, but it's in the water. And the water, in the lashon of another Rashi, the lashon was Rishush Shteim. The Aruch HaShulchan brings it down, I saw. I don't have the Gemara in front of me, but I have an Aruch HaShulchan here. Rishus Shnehem Sholetespa. The Rishus of both Chatzeros is Sholet, has control over all the water in the bar. Now think about it for a minute, right? You could draw all the water out of the bar while keeping your bucket on your side of the fence, right? If you decided you wanted to empty the whole bar, could you empty the whole bar by using a bucket and keeping the bucket on your side? Yes, you can, because the water will just flow over, right? So Rishus Shteim Sholetesba. The water is considered a shared Rishus, even if you keep the bucket on your side. So that's why I said, you take the bucket, the Dli Sheshavas Babayis, as soon as you lower it down into the bar, even if you keep it on your side, you're transferring a Keli Sheshavas Babayis to a Rishus that you don't have an Erev with, because you're lowering it into a shared Rishus that's shared with the adjoining Chatzah. Says the Mishnah Berurah cutting Gimel, Ela imkein also mechitza asara. You have to make this 10 tefach tall mechitza kedei lahafsik bein harishuyos, to create a separation between the rishuyos in the bar. V'yehei kol echad doile me rishusai. So that now it should be considered that you're drawing water from your rishus, not from a shared rishus. O mechitzas hakoisel she'omer al gabi abar. The wall that separates the 2 chatzeros that transverses over the bar, that doesn't count for anything. Ein moyelo ze klal. That does not do anything for us. The be'inan dafka shetei asuya l'shem kach. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there are 2 requirements that you need for this mechitza that we're going to create to be effective. Requirement number 1, shetei asuya l'shem kach. The mechitza has to be made for the distinct purpose of separating the bar into shtei rishuyos. The wall that separates the chatzeros was not made for that. That was made to be a mechitza between a wall between 2 chatzeros. It did not serve, it wasn't constructed for the purpose of separating the bar. It went over the bar. So that's requirement number 1. Requirement number 2, ubesoich oigen habar. The second requirement is that it has to be inside the banks of the bar. The upper wall goes across the top of the bar. It doesn't go into the bar. We need a mechitza that goes into the bar. Excuse me. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ice Cotton Dalit. V'tzarich sheyiheh. In the first way that you can make this mechitza, you're going to start from the top down. So you're making a mechitza that starts, let's say, up at the surface, at the banks of the bar, and it goes down into the bar. Now, maybe the water level is 9 tefachim down. That's okay. Most of the, or almost all of the wall could be above the water level. But v'tzarich sheyeh, 1 tefach at least has to extend beneath the water level. V'tzarich sheyeh, why? Kedei sheyeh nicker hefsik ha-mechitza ha-mechalekes b'saych hamayim. Because there has to be a hecker that this mechitza is dividing the water. We only have that hecker if at least a tefach of the wall extends beneath the water line. Even though, let's be real, we're not going down to the bottom of the pit, so the water will still flow under the wall. You're still capable of taking water, so to speak, from the other chotzer, because, right, the water's going to flow. Arive Maya, says the Mishnah Berurah, Kal hu sheikelu mamayim. This is a kula that Chazal made by water, lahatir b'mechitza kazu, to be matir and to allow for the drawing of water in such a situation with 2 chatzeros, with the bar in the middle. The be'inon rak shelo yikanis hadli. This is such a critically important line that the Chavetz Chaim drew from a rush. The Chavetz Chaim over here in this Siman, I mean, this is unbelievable what he did here. In this Kedarkai BaKodesh, the Chavetz Chaim went through all the Rishonim, and he picked critical lines, critical phrases from different Rishonim. So over here he draws from the rush. The critical point over here, says the Chavetz Chaim, and I think we're going to end up coming back to this a few times, is that when you take the bucket from Chotzer A, let's say, and you drop it into the bar, you're clearly going into your side. You're not going into the other side. You can't. There's a mechitza that's blocking off. So you're dropping it into your side. Arive Maya, the water still mixes, yes, but you are drawing from your side. If there would be no wall there, right, you could drop the bucket could go in at an angle, it goes under the wall, and it goes to the other side. Now, even in this case, right, you only have a tefach going underneath the water line. It is still possible that your bucket may travel a little bit to the other side. It seems that we don't care about that. We're not concerned about that, because like he says here, the be'inon rak shelo yikanis hadli behedya lechelek chavera. It has to be clear that you are not dropping the bucket into the other side. You are dropping the bucket into your side. What's going to happen 5 tefachim under the water, I'm not concerned about. We have the hecker, we have the divider, we're good. Ois katan hey. So 1 tefach has to go beneath the water line, tefach min ha-mechitza. V'chol shkein machatzisa lamato machatzisa lamayla. Says the Mishnah Berurah, I have to think about this line of the Mishnah Berurah a little bit more and think if there's a bigger chiddush that he's trying to say. But says the Chavetz Chaim, yeah, I mean, the Mechaber says you could have 9 tefachim above the water line, 1 tefach beneath the water line. Obviously, if you have 5 tefachim above and 5 tefachim below, that's also okay. Maybe his point is, don't think that you need roiv of the mechitza to be above the water line so that it's more nicker. I guess that's his chiddush, right? You might say, yeah, you only need 1 tefach beneath the water line, but you need at least 9 tefachim above the water line, otherwise it's not so nicker. No, you could have 5 tefachim above the water line and 5 tefachim beneath the water line. That's also good. Or you could make the mechitza the other way, going from the bottom up. You could have your 10 tefach mechitza. In the second scenario, you're starting from the bottom up, and the Mechaber said you need 1 tefach extending above the water line. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you need that 1 tefach extending above the water line, even if you make a 20 tefach deep wall that goes all the way to the bottom of the bar. You still need 1 tefach protruding above the water line because you need the hecker. Ois katan zayin nikeres. It has to be nicker. It has to be recognizable that this is here to separate the bar into two reshuyos. Nikeres hahafrasha. The separation has to be recognizable. Ubezeh tefach levad sagi, and this one tefach that protrudes above the waterline is enough. And now, again, he uses a very interesting line, and this he brings from a Magen Avram. It's enough. Shelo yelech hadli l'reshus chaverei. If you wouldn't have any of the wall extending above the waterline, so first of all, it would be very easy to chuck the dli over the separating wall, which is only beneath the water. You might take the dli, chuck it into the bar, and it's going to go over the wall to the other side. We can't have that. We need it to stay on your side. And we need it to be nicker that it's staying on your side. So we need that wall to extend above the waterline. Okay, so that was takana number 1. That was the first way that the Mechaber gave us to rectify this situation. Now 2 lines off the bottom near the end of the line, the Mechaber is going to give us another one. Says the Mechaber v'chein, similarly, im asu al pi habar, koira rechava arba tfachim. You could take a beam or a plank that's 4 tfachim wide. So 4 tfachim, 13.5 to 16 inches, something like that wide. You could take a plank that's that wide. Doesn't say how thick it has to be, but the width has to be dalit tfachim wide. You could take such a plank. So again, remember, we have the bar, the round bar that's straddling the 2 chatzeros. We have the wall that goes over the middle of it, but it doesn't go into the bar. What could you do now? You could take a dalit tfachim wide plank, lay it down going over the bar. Maybe you lay it right next to the wall. And now it's laying across the top of the bar. So you can take a kaira, v'chein im asu al pi habar. You lay across the top of the bar. Kaira rechava arba tfachim, a beam that is 4 tfachim wide. Yeah. You could take this plank, and then zeh mimale mitzad ha'kaira, v'zeh mimale mitzad ha'acher. Then each chotzer could draw water from their side of the kaira. This kaira, which is laying across the top, is also going to serve as a means of separating the bar into 2 different reshuyos. How will it do that? We'll discuss that in a moment. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah first. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kal Ches V'chein, also return to learn, the Mechaber wants to say, Sheinichu lechatchila milamala al svas habar. You take this plank, and you're laying this plank across the top of the bar for the specific purpose of dividing the bar into 2 different reshuyos. Kedei lahater amayim. You're doing it, again, you're doing it for this reason. Remember what the Mishnah Berurah said before. The Mishnah Berurah said before that the wall that divides between the 2 chatzeros is not effective because it wasn't made for that. It was made to separate the reshuyos, not to separate the mayim. So here too, you could use this plank that's dalit tfachim wide, but it has to be laid down over there for the distinct purpose of separating the bar into 2 different reshuyos. But if you didn't put down the plank for that reason, then it won't be effective. Each chotzer could now draw water from their side. The reason is we're using royan. We look at this kaira as forming a mechitza that extends downward into the pit, to the water, and it divides each side to itself. Now, this seems to be a much bigger kula than we had before. Over here, we don't seem to have anything that's going into the bar. We certainly don't have anything that's extending beneath the waterline. Yet, says the Mishnah Berurah, the way this works is, royim, we look at it as if this kaira is going down to the water and making a division. Big chiddush, right? Let's go a little weiter. The kan, and over here, ein lachush, we don't have to be concerned. Ein lachush loimar, shezed doila me rishos chaverei. You would think that immediately there's a huge problem. right? You're going to take, Chatzarei is going to take their Dli Sheshavas Babayas, they're going to chuck it down into the bar, it's going to go directly to the other side. There's mamish no separation. All there is a Dalet Tefach wide plank across the top of the bar. How does that prevent the bucket from going straight into the other side? Says the Mishnah Berurah, "V'kan ein lachish loimer shezed doyle mirishos chaveroi." Now we do not need to be concerned that we're going to one side is going to directly draw from the other side. Levisha shiaru chachamim, because the Chazal estimated, they shiaru chachamim, they set a shear, they set a measurement. They said this is the way it is. Levisha shiaru chachamim. She'ein dli, and this is based on a Gemara Pei Vav and Beis. She'ein dli mahalech yoyser me'arbot tvachim. They decided that when you drop a dli into the water, it's not going to drift more than 4 tvachim away. So now you have a plank that's 4 tvachim wide, right? So you are staying within 4 tvachim of your side, right? So when you drop the dli into the water, it might drift, but it's not going to drift all the way to the other side of the plank. Now, in my mind, I'm struggling a little bit with this because exactly where is this plank, right? You don't need 8 tvachim, you only need 4 tvachim. So where is this plank? If this plank is under the middle of the wall, so then there's 2 tvachim on your side, on Chatzar A's side, there's 2 tvachim on Chatzar B's side. What's with the middle? I'm not 100% sure, but it seems that the only concern would be if it would go all the way from one side of the plank all the way to the other side of the plank, and that Chazal said won't happen. It's not going to wander, it's not going to drift more than 4 tvachim. Shein dli malach yoyser me'arbot tvachim. V'im kain, and therefore, lo yachtzov mayim mitzad habar shu b'rishos chaveroi. Since your bucket is not going to travel more than 4 tvachim, it's going to stay on your side, and you're not going to draw water. Yachtzoiv over here means to draw the water. You're not going to draw water from the other side. You're drawing water from your side. Ayarive Maya, the water mixes. Again, this is a kula that Chazal made by Mayim. Like the Mishnah Berurah said before. What do we need? Right? What did he say at the end of Eis Katan Dalid? The be'inon rak shelo yikanis hadli behedya l'chelik chavera. You're not dropping the bucket into the other side. You're keeping the bucket on your side. So that's called you're not drawing water from the other side. And now you're not taking anything from the other rishus. You're staying within your rishus. And you're not dropping your bucket into the other rishus. You're dropping your bucket into your rishus. Lo yakzer mayim mitzad habar shu b'rishus chaverei. V'av shechoytze mitachas HaTorah. V'sham rishus shneim sholtois. What do you mean? Where are you drawing water from? Underneath the Korah, right? And Arive Maya, doesn't matter. Like I just said, Kal hu shekel chachamim b'mayim. It's a din d'Rabbanan. This is a kula the Chazal made. Vein tzarich, again, says the Mishnah Berurah, vein tzarich ela shelo yehei nikr lehedya shechoytze b'rishos chaverei. The critical point over here is that it can't be obvious that you're drawing water from the other side. Give me 1 second over here. So there is an interesting bir halacha over here. It's a bir halacha that starts on Reish Mem Hey Amud Aleph. It's bir halacha dibra maschel v'cheinim also al pi abar kaira rechava arba tvachim. It's very meduyik from the lashon of the Mechaber that this plank is laying across the top of the bar, right? The Mechaber said v'cheinim also al pi habar kaira rechava arba tvachim. Chavetz Chaim is not so happy with this, because if you look on Reish Mem Hey Amud Beis, the Bir Halacha brings down over here. He says, "V'da, you should know the lashon Shulchan Aruch shekasev v'masu al pi habar hu me'utik milashon Rambam." The Mechaber is taking this straight out of the Rambam, but uba avodas hakodesh, in the avodas hakodesh of the Rashba, ra'isi shekasev v'makar b'soich hagen habar. The Rashba wants the plank to be inside the banks of the bar. V'chein gam kein das Rabbeinu Yeruchim b'nesiv Yud Beis chelik Yud Zayin ayin sham v'tzarich iyon lamaisa. The Bir Halacha is kind of tzarich iyon lamaisa. We have a Rambam like this, we have a Rashba like that. One of my one of my wonderful, wonderful listeners reached out to me. He's a little bit ahead of me. He reached out to me and he asked me about this Biur Halacha. Like, Chavetz Chaim seems to be running very far afield over here. I mean, we're talking about the Rabbanans. We have a Mechaber that chose to give us the Rambam. The Mechaber did not give us the Shitas HaRashba. He gave us the Rambam. He took it straight out of the Rambam, and he said, Al Pi Be'er. He didn't say B'soich Oigen Abar. Very nice. There's an Avodah HaKodesh that says B'soich Oigen Abar. Why is the Biur Halacha running so far afield and saying, therefore, Tzarech Iyon Lamaisa? I mean, why can't we just falazach on the Mechaber who chose to give us the Shitas HaRambam? The only answer that I could give to that question, Bradley, off the top of my head, is that the Chavetz Chaim is just very bothered. I mean, I'm not putting myself in the same chotzer, as the Chavetz Chaim, but I was bothered learning this sif over here, the merchak, the differential between the two takonos that the Shulchan Aruch is giving us, how to resolve this situation of this be'er that's between the two chatzeros. The first one, we're actually constructing a mechitza 10 tfachim that's going into the bar, and it's partially, at least, in the water. Partially in the water, partially above the water. And now in the second one with the kaira, we're going to have a kaira that's not in the oigen bar at all. It's not even inside the bar. Forget being inside the water. And somehow that's going to be matir, the same thing that the first Eitzah was matir. Seems to be a very huge merchak between the two. Okay, comes along the Biur Halacha and says, well, the Rashba at least makes it a little bit easier. The Rashba in the Avodah HaKodesh says at least the kaira is b'soich oigen abar. Like, if it's not b'soich oigen abar, it's almost no better than the wall above. It's better than the wall above because it was put there with the kavana of dividing the bar into two separate rishuyos. But it's above the oigen abar the same way the wall is. It could be that the Chavetz Chaim was just very bothered by the vast differential between these two tikkunim. And maybe that's why he went and he brought down the Rashba and said Tzarech Iyon Lamaisa. As far as how exactly this kaira serves to separate the bar into two rishuyos, that's actually an interesting machlokes rishonim. Rashi seems to want to say that it works with good asik b'chitzasa, and Tosfos seems to want to say that it's dalit tfachim. Dalit tfachim, we say pitik reyorid v'saisim. So interesting how the different rishonim are playing with exactly what the mechanism of this kaira is. Okay. All right, let's go weiter. Wow, I can't believe how late it is already. Turning back to Reish Mem Hey, Amud Aleph, 2 lines off the bottom. No, we did that already. Now let's go to the Ramah. Bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch near the end of the line, Hagah. Says the Ramah, V'dafka im ba'al amalis b'kelim shel bayis. This whole issue, says the Ramah, is only negeya if you're using a deli sheshavas babayis. If you're using a bucket that started off Shabbos in a house, that's why we have an issue. You're taking a keli sheshavas babayis and you're dropping it into the bar, which is a shared rishus, different rishus, right? But says the Ramah, aval b'kelim shel chotzer. But if you use a deli sheshavas b'chotzer, then there's no problem dropping it into the shared rishus. Aval b'kelim shel chotzer loy be'inon shum tikun. Then you don't need to do any of this. Right? But what the Ramah doesn't say is, even if you use a deli sheshavas b'chotzer, it's very nice that you could take the deli and you could drop it into the bar. You could also take mayim out of the bar and bring it to the chotzer. But you can't bring the water to your house. That would be taking mayim from a different rishus and bringing it to your house in the chotzer. That you're not allowed to do. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Kat yod loy b'yinon shum tikun." V'al kol panim, asur lahaktis hamayim l'bayis im lo yaseh shum tikun. Like I just said, you still wouldn't be able to bring the water to your house to loy evru shtei chatzeres b'yachad because they did not join in a joint iruv chatzeres. Let's do sif beis. Says the Mechaber, 2 lines off the top. Reish Mem Hey Amid Beis. Be'er shebe'emtza hashvil bein shnei koslei chatzeres. So, again, if you have a Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, take a look at footnote number 13. Footnote number 13 has a picture of this, and the Oiz V'Hadar also has a picture. I did not love the picture in the Oiz V'Hadar, and I'll tell you why. It would be the second picture down on the left-hand column. That would be the picture. Now, for those of you who don't have any of the pictures, what are we talking about here? We have Chotzer A and Chotzer B, but they're not adjoining each other. There's Chotzer A that is Mukaf Bechitzos, surrounded by walls. There's Chotzer B that's surrounded by walls. But between Chotzer A and Chotzer B, there's a shvil. A shvil is a path. It's not a street. It's not a Rishus Harabim. That's critical. It's a pathway. Now, what I like better about the picture in the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, in footnote number 13, is that if you look at that picture, you'll see that you have the two chatzeros, each one on one side of the shvil, and at the back end of the shvil, you have a picket fence. Now, there's a very strong reason why Dirshu did that when they made the footnote, and that is that this shvil has to be a Rishus HaYachid. Why is it a Rishus HaYachid in their picture? Well, it's Mukaf Gimel Mechitzos, surrounded by 3 mechitzas. So right away, it's a Rishus HaYachid. But it's very critical for a proper understanding of Sif Beis to understand that this shvil, this pathway between the two chatzeros, is a Rishus HaYachid. So now, again, let's visualize this very clearly in our heads, and let's do the math. Chotzer A, surrounded by 4 mechitzas, it has houses in it. Chotzer B, surrounded by 4 mechitzas, it has houses in it. Between Chotzer A and Chotzer B, there's a shvil. There's this path, right? And the interior of that path is also a Rishus HaYachid. Now, that shvil is owned jointly by Chotzer A and Chotzer B. So the ownership of that shvil is a joint ownership. Inside that shvil, in the middle of that pathway that's located between the chatzeros, there's a bor. There's a water pit, a water cistern in middle of that shvil that's between the two chatzeros. Now, the bar does not go into either one of the two chatzeros. It exists only in the shvil that's between the two chatzeros. Now, each chatzer has a window in the wall of their chatzer that adjoins the shvil. So here are your 2 walls. The shvil is in the middle. The bar is in the middle. Each chatzer has a window in the wall that separates them from the shvil. So chatzer A has a window in their wall. Chatzer B has a window in their wall. They could use that window to take a bucket, put it out the window, lower it down into the bar that's in the shvil, and draw water up from the bar and bring it into their chatzer. Now, another critical point over here is that is the only access that the chatzeros have to the shvil. They don't have a doorway to the shvil. The only way they can get to the shvil is by accessing it through the window. That's the only way that they could access. Now let's do the math. Let's figure out what the problem over here is. Well, Chotzer A and Chotzer B are not joined in a joint eruv chatzeros, right? Now, there's this shvil that's a jointly owned Rishus HaYachid between them. So you could very easily look at this and say that in the context of the shvil, Chotzer A and Chotzer B should aser on each other. Inside Chotzer A, there's no problem transferring a keli sheshavas babayis to the chotzer. They made an eruv chatzeros. In Chotzer B, there's no problem transferring a keli sheshavas babayis to their chotzer. They made an eruv chatzeros, right? But they can't transfer it to each other. And the shvil is a joint rishus. Each one could use that shvil. So the shvil and the bar that's contained within the shvil, l'chayra, you could look at this and say that it's a joint rishus. If it's a joint rishus, then the two chatzeros are going to aser on each other. And then neither chatzer would be allowed to take a dli. If they have a keli sheshavas babayis, they wouldn't be allowed to put it out the window and put it down into the bar. They're taking a keli sheshavas babayis in their chatzer, and they're transferring it out to a different rishus, to a shared rishus, to a shared chatzer. They can't do that, right? That's what you would think. But the Mechaber is going to tell us that that's not the case. Says the Mechaber. Be'er shebe'emtza hashvil, a water pit that's located in the middle of a shvil, middle of a pathway, bein shnei koslei chatzeros, that exists between the two walls of two different chatzeros. Af al pi shehu mufleges mikoisel ze arba tvakim, umikoisel ze arba tvakim, says the Mechaber, even though, and we're going to struggle with the meaning of this even though. We're going to have to see that in the Mishnah Berurah. But it says the Mechaber, even though this bar is removed from each wall of the chatzeros by 4 tfachim or more. So again, this is the wall that separates chatzer A from the shvil. This is the wall that separates chatzer B from the shvil. The bar is in the middle of the shvil. The distance from the bank of the shvil to the wall of each chatzer on each side is 4 tfachim or more. Says the Mechaber, even though that's the case, and again, we're going to struggle with that even though, Shneihem memalim mimena, each chatzer is allowed to take a bucket, put it out the window on the wall, and draw water from the be'er. Ve'enam tzrichim zizim al gabon. They don't need a shelf, a ledge on the outside of their wall as a hecker. We'll understand that from the Mishnah Berurah, but they don't need to do anything. That's the point. They're allowed to go ahead, take a bucket, sheshavas babayas, put it out the window in the wall, put it down into the bar, bring water up, take the water to their chatzar, and bring it into their house. The two chatzeres do not aser on each other in this shvil and in this bar. Why? She'ein adam oiser al chaveroi derech avir. Since the only way these chatzeros have access to the be'er is derech avir, the only way they could draw water from this bar is by putting a bucket out the window, putting it through the air down to the bar, and then back. There's no other way for them to access it. This is not considered true access. We don't look at it that this is a shared rishus because you have two different chatzeros that each have use of something in the middle. We don't look at this as use. We don't look at this as true hishtamshus. We look at it as a non-issue. Nobody has ownership of ownership in the context of the halachas of Reuven Chatzeros. We're not going to look at it that we're sharing this and therefore we aser on each other. No, neither one of you really has it. The only hishtamshus that you have is hishtamshus derech avir. That means nobody has it. You don't really have it, you don't really have it. And therefore you do not aser on each other. Says the Mishnah Berurah. I know it's scary because we're already 47 minutes in and we have a decent amount of Mishnah Berurah, but I think with all the explanation that I gave, we should be able to go through the Mishnah Berurah relatively quick. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Cut Yud Aleph. Shebe'emtza shvil, there's this bar in the middle of the shvil. Hainu. Sheyesh kibin movi koton mafsik bein shtei chatzeros. There's like a little alleyway that separates between the two chatzeros. V'hu shayich l'shtei chatzeros. The ownership is joint ownership. Ubar be'emtza, and there's a bar in the middle of this shvil. Umeshal shal adli l'saychay derech haloyin shebekais ala chatzeros. The way they draw water from this bar is by passing a dli through a window in the wall that's alongside the shvil on each side. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Miloshin zeh, from the language that the Mechaber uses here, mashma, the clear implication is the kolshkein kishi mufleches pochus me'abot tvachim. Right? What does the Mechaber say? The Mechaber says, even though the banks of the bar are 4 tvachim or more away from the walls, even though it's still mutter. What's the clear implication? Well, if it was less than 4 tvachim, if the banks of the bar were closer to the wall than 4 tvachim, then certainly it would be mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that seems backwards. It would seem, al pi svara, that the more distant the bar is from the walls of the chatzeros, the more reason there is for it to be mutter, right? Because the whole underpinning of this heter is that neither chatzer is said to have true ishtamshus of the bar. So the more difficult you make that ishtamshus, l'chayra is more of a reason to be matir, right? But that's not what the Mechaber says. The Mechaber says, even though it's more than 4 tvachim removed from the walls, it's still mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what's going on here? Fatam. The reason for this explains the Mishnah Berurah as follows, and you just have to follow the math there. This opinion holds that a usage that you have only through a window across the airspace, l'deyazu detamin mikri derech avir, bein kishu muflag about tvachim, ubein pachas me'ad tvachim. This shita holds that once you have to go through a window and cross the airspace, we're always going to call that difficult access. We're always going to call it derech avir. That's always called hishtamshus, which is only derech avir, which is called difficult access. So even if the banks of the bar are right next to your wall, we still don't consider it true hishtamshus to go out the window and down to the bar, because once you have to go out a window and down, that's already called difficult hishtamshus. Okay, that's fact number one. Now we could understand why the Mechaber said, oh, it's mutter even if it's removed 4 tvachim. And what if it's less? That's less of a reason to be matir? Says the Mishnah, yeah, it could be. Not only is this mutter if the banks of the bar are within 4 tvachim to one of the chatzeros, so you might think that in that case, that chotzer, let's say it's within 2 tvachim to one side, and it's 6 tvachim away, or 4 tvachim away from the other side. So in that case, you understand right away that the chotzer that's further away cannot aser on the chotzer that's closer. Because what do you mean? I'm close. I'm within 2 tvachim. I'm tashmishay benachas. You're 4 tvachim away. You're tashmishay bekoshe. Right? Shenayin hey, shenayin beis. Right? So zicha you can't aser on me. Loi mi baya, in that case, they don't aser on each other. Svira leila deyazu, debavade, ein chavera oiser alav, avshalei avru yachad. In that case, for sure, the other chotzer can't aser on him, even though they're not in a joint river chatzeros. Ela afilu imhu muflag abad tvachim mimenu. Even if both chatzeros are 4 tvachim away, the gamle chotzer asamoch ein benachas. So now, neither one is benachas. Let's say I'm 4 tvachim away and you're 6 tvachim away, right? But we have equal access because we're both considered to be kosher. We're both more than 4 tvachim away. Still, the other chotzer can't aser on me because you don't really have true usage of the bar, of the shvil. Why? Because it's tashmish derech avir. So it comes out that, again, the underpinnings of this halacha is that we don't aser on each other because neither one of us is considered to have true ishtamshus. The Mechaber says, even if it's 4 tvachim away. What's the even? The even is, you might have thought that if it's 4 tvachim away or more from each side, maybe they should aser on each other. Because, yes, they both have tashmish that's kosher, they both have difficult access, but it's shava b'shava. They both have equal difficult access. The answer is no. Even in that case, they don't aser on each other. Why? Because, according to this opinion, once you have tashmish derech avir, even if you're right there by the wall, even if you're less than 4 tvachim, it's not called tashmish at all. It's not called that you have usage, because it's tashmish derech avir. Neither one of you really has true access and true usage of this bar, and therefore they don't aser on each other. And therefore, you don't need to make ledges or shelves on the outside of the wall going towards the bar. The only reason the Mechaber is saying this is because of a shita. I believe it's not shita from Yehuda. It's shita. I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say. So, this comes to stand in contrast to stay not like the Shita in the Gemara, who says the Be'ina Dafka Sheyotzi Kalecha Ziz Kolshu Mikaslai Ad Labar. There's a Shita in the Gemara that says that each side has to make a ledge protruding from the outside of the wall, going to the bar, lehekera, as a sign, shelo yavel l'taltal ba'alma merishus l'rishus. They have to make a ziz that serves as a reminder that this is an abnormal situation. And that's why we're allowed to take water for what seems to be a shared rishus. But normally, you're not allowed to transfer from a shared rishus. There is such a sheet in the Gemara. We're paskening not that way. Okay. Let's finish off this sif. So we are 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch by the Haggah. Says the Ramah, "V'davka kishe'ena chatzeros psuchos l'shvil rak b'chalonos." First thing that we have to realize is, like I spoke out, this halacha is only germane when the only access to the shvil is through the chalonos. There's no doorway from either chatzer going to the shvil. Says the Mishnah cut Yudalad rak b'chalonos. Da'oz have a tashmish mili adlil min be'er rak derech aver. Since the only access they have is through the window, so each chotzer only has tashmish derech aver. That's why they don't answer on each other. Aval kisheyesh psachem e'chatzeres l'shvil. But if there are doorways going from the chatzeres to the shvil, in kain oisi hashvil rishush deim sholtos by tamid b'tashmish gomor, then the shvil is a real bona fide shared rishus. Then each one of the chatzeros has access to the shvil, so real access, bona fide access. Well, then the shvil is a real bona fide shared rishus. Then they can't use it unless they join in a joint river chatzeros. Then they can't use it even going through the window. Because now the shvil is a real shared rishus, and they didn't make a joint to river chatzeros. V'asa calls manchaleir v'biyachad. Then even to make these ledges on the outside of the walls won't help. It's a bona fide shared rishus. You need a joint to river chatzeros. Now let's see the rest of this Ramah. Says the Ramah now an opinion that's completely the flip of the first opinion of the Mechaber. The Yesh Omrim, there are those that say, Dim eno meflogim arba, if the space from the bank of the bar to the walls on each side is less than 4 tfachim, the Yesh Omrim dim eno meflogim arba, oisra mafilu b'kai gavna. Then they aser on each other. What's behind kai gavna? Even in a case where there are no doorways. So even in our basic case, the only access to the shvil is the chaloinos. But this shita says, if from the walls of the 2 chatzeros to the banks of the bar on each side is less than 4 tfachim, then they're going to aser on each other. Even if the only access to the shvil is the chaloinos, they're still going to aser on each other. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut tezvav yesharim dem einon deyazu svirala. This opinion holds lihipuch mider kamaisa, the opposite of the first opinion. De ein lahater rak dafka kishabar muflug min kosle achatzeros arba tvachim. This shita holds that you can't be matter this unless the bar is at least 4 tfachim away from each side. Da'oz mikri atashmish derech aver. Then we could say that neither chatzer really has usage of the bar, because they have to go out a window and they have to traverse 4 tfachim to get to the bar. That's not called usage, and therefore they don't aser on each other. But if the edge of the bar is within 4 tfachim of each chatzer, then loy mikri derech aver. That's not called tashmish derech aver. Elachoshev tashmish l'shteim benachas. And instead, now we look at it that they each have noyach tashmishte. Now they each have tashmish benachas to the bar in the shvil. And now they're going to aser on each other. Even if there's no other access to the shvil, the tashmishad who rak derech haloynoi shabakaisel, and the only usage is through the windows. Upasku ha'achrayim kedeyazu. And the Achrayim Paskin, like this more machber opinion brought by the Ramah. We're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Sif Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Schus of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua Sefuos Panasot Sheduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Piaska El Tzedek B'Meher of Yameinu Amen. Be well.